Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Life After Kids with Doctors Brooke and Lynn. I'm Dr. Brooke.
I'm Dr. Lynn.
Thank you so much for joining us today. Super excited about this topic. Dr. Lynn had her hair up and actually said, I got to take my hair down
for this because this week we're talking about taking more risks. At this stage in our life, I firmly believe that many of us are actually seeking a way to get a little uncomfortable instead of really going after and seeking that comfort that we once thought was so desirable, right? And taking risks is such a huge part of our growth.
Yeah.
And we need to continue to grow and learn at this phase in our life. Or else, guys, if we're not growing, we're dying. It's not a standstill. You're either point at one direction or the other.
Right. And we don't want to become stagnant, I don't think, in this phase of life. I mean, and listen, everybody's wired a little bit differently. So for some of us, that might feel pretty good right now. And we've had some people mention that in the community that like, man, I've been striving and working and doing all my life. When is it time for me to rest? If that's you, that's fine too. But we're speaking to, I think, more to the person that's like, what's next? Or I need to find what's next. Or I want like something else that's going to fill me up. Right.
I think if you're really tired, it's probably a sign that you're in work that you're doing as a means to an end. And that's totally fine. Because by the way, many of us are doing that or still doing that. Right.
Sure.
But I think that is an indication that you do need a rest. Our point is that a rest should be a month or 2 months or 3 months, but at some point that leisure, that rest is going to lead you to a place where it's like, okay, well, what's next? And so that's what we're speaking to.
Yes.
If you need a rest, great. You need to plan on that and find a way to get that.
Yes.
But through that, once you get rested, so to speak, you're still going to need to find a way to put yourself out there, and it's going to require some risks to get there.
Absolutely. And it can feel uncomfortable. This is the thing, right? But I think that's what we're talking about, is stepping out of our comfort zone. And we're also having this conversation, and we're going to get even deeper into this in an upcoming episode on 6 basic human needs. But it's this whole idea of like spontaneity versus certainty, right? Taking a risk when we need to, as opposed to many of us are seeking just more certainty and holding back. But if we go into that realm too far, which I can have the tendency to do, we don't grow maybe the way we need to. And once again, I've said this before, but like, newsflash, we're not getting any younger.
Right.
Like, right. We are all here for a reason. I think we all would like to leave some mark on this world. It doesn't have to be a big, huge, like even little things that we do can make a difference in our lives or somebody else's lives. And it brings us, I think, a greater sense of fulfillment and meaning, which I believe that's what we're looking for as moms of kids are older, and like, what can we do now?
I really think you're right. I think it's at the root of that. It's, how does my life matter to others, right? And our kids are older, and we used to really get a lot of validation on how that mattered because our kids were there, they were snuggling, we were their whole world, right?
Yes.
And we still are in some respects, but we're not daily doing the mothering, and so that immediate those results aren't right there. And so it's what do you now channel that time, energy, and focus that you have? Where are you going to channel that extra, those extra resources, right? And how can it benefit the world, right? So that it is meaningful, and you do matter. Your life matters no matter what you give.
Absolutely.
It's right. Can we just
it's
not
based on
non-negotiable? No, it's not based on what you do. You are valuable because you exist. You're you.
Right.
But if you are in a healthy space and you are able to give back, then that sense of meaning can just be, exponential.
Right. And I think we're also here to become every day, I think, more of ourselves, right? To know ourselves better, to grow, it's not, the name of the game is not minimizing ourselves. No. And I think this is where taking a risk is putting yourself out there, doing the thing is one of the best ways to grow yourself. When you step out of your comfort zone, when you stop minimizing yourself. And here's the thing, I think this just occurred to me right now. It's such an important conversation in midlife or our phase of life, because it feels like the overarching narrative is typically like, you're at
Slow
the age where you
down,
need to just slow down and play it safe. And,
put
you're
it on
too old to be doing that. Or what's the point now? Like that was for your 20s. Don't go run that race now. Like, why would you go and whatever it is, like climb the
yeah,
14er that we did? Like, that's for, you know what I'm saying?
yeah.
Like, and sometimes if we want that, you're searching for that sense of exhilaration or feeling alive. We get there with taking risks.
Yeah. Well, and let's talk about it, because we're not necessarily just talking about doing the bungee jumping, right? Or at least I'm not. Or
Yep.
climbing the mountain. I'm talking about picking up the phone and calling a local, maybe you have a nutrition store or something, calling a local influencer and like saying, hey, I love your work. I'd love to get together. Like, that's something where maybe you're stepping outside your comfort zone.
Yeah.
Okay. That's a professional example. It could also be you taking a chance. Somebody asked you at your church to speak and you really don't see yourself as a public speaker or as a contributor, but they came to you because they see your beautiful family and they know there's something, the results are there, the proof's in the
Yeah.
pudding, and they want you to share that. And it could be as simple as taking a risk for you would be saying yes to that. Whereas previously you would have said, no, I'm taken up with taking care of my family. Right. So these aren't always the adrenaline inducing risks we're talking about.
Right. Although I would argue that even those small things can get the adrenaline going.
Yeah, they're great.
Because when I get on
catalysts.
stage, the adrenaline is flowing, maybe more so than when I conquer a
true.
big feat,
Yeah, this is true. And I think those are great like catalysts. So if you just want growth, there's nothing like jumping off a bridge or skydiving to when you land your feet on the ground, you're a different person,
Yeah.
right? Than when you went up in that plane. Just by simply taking that leap and doing that thing, you prove to yourself that you can do hard things
Right.
and scary things.
Yeah. And that's a good piece to this taking a risk. And once again, it could just be making that phone call that you were afraid to make or applying for the thing or taking that class. But
Yep.
every time you take a risk and push yourself out of your comfort zone, you prove to yourself in a very real, concrete way that you are stronger than you think you are. And
Yes.
sometimes that's for somebody running a race or, doing a big hike. And sometimes that's applying for the job or, speaking up for yourself when you wouldn't have before.
Yes.
Sometimes and we've talked about this too, and maybe this isn't a risk, but maybe it is you going to the gym and starting that workout and lifting the heavy weight.
That's a
And you're
risk.
proving to yourself that you can do it. And, you don't care. Who cares if there's 20 somethings there lifting and you feel like you look clumsy or awkward? Like, you did it and you can do it. And
you
can
just
continue
proved
to do
it,
it. Yes.
right?
And you just proved it. Right.
Yeah. I mean, back to what we started the conversation with, it's so much more about growth. And I think we need to resist the urge just the natural tendency is going to be like, slow down, downshift, basically just walk towards the sunset, right? Walk towards the ending credits.
Retirement.
Yes, yes. And that I just want you to say, like, is that actually what I want? So this is a conversation to get you to ask the right questions of yourself, because that might sound amazing.
Yep.
Right. And you might need just a rest with it. Or, once again, you might see that, oh, I have so much more time to give, or to be able to give back.
Yep.
And what are the possibilities, right? So our mission is always to help people see the possibilities
Yes.
of what could come from you putting your gifts out there.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Which lends itself then to, once again, like, you're so much more fulfilling life, right?
Yeah. So what risks have you taken lately? Putting you on the spot.
You're asking me a big question. Recently, I'll give you a good example. We have this business mastermind that we're both members of that we travel with, like, periodically through the year, and about once, and it's men and women, a lot of like family, spouses, stuff like that. But once a year or once every other year, there's just a women's only retreat, right? Just for the women of the group. And there's some really powerful women in that group. And there's a lot of women in that group that have built big businesses that have been, killing it for years. And so it's an easy place to feel a little, what's the word I'm looking for, overwhelmed or less than, right? Intimidated, that's the word I was looking for. And I spent a lot. I wasn't the person that was building, like I've had a business,
Mhm.
right? I have seen patients too, but I didn't have the big huge, I had more time at home with the kids because my husband was out and traveling and doing the thing. That's the lifestyle that we chose. But it's easy for me, and it's been easy for me to be in that space where would take a step back, just sort of, I think hand in hand with taking a risk also comes, are you going to take a risk? Are you going to minimize yourself or keep yourself in a box, which is my tendency to just play it safe, be a little quiet, blend in, be careful what I say, because I don't want to ruffle feathers. Don't like just speak and be me, or get there and stick to just the women that I know that I'm really close with and hang out with them. And I made a decision this last event, which was in the fall, that was like, maybe it was even on some sort of a subconscious level, that I was going to make it a point to talk to and sit with and lunch with. And during that long weekend that we were there, as many different women as I could, and women that I would maybe not necessarily have spoken to or haven't, and just legitimately be myself. With what, from the stupid jokes, because I have a weird sense of humor that I would crack, or just, whatever it was, showing
That's
my
a risk.
personality.
Yep.
And that was a big, for me, that you might be listening thinking, well, what's risky about that? For me, that was a big, like, that was a risk.
That's awesome.
And I can tell you that I came out of that, like, I felt so much more confident in myself, like so much growth there for me. But on the other side of that, I got to know and meet so many women that I would have never even thought to approach or talk to, because I would think that they would be like judging everything that I said, or quote on a high horse or something. And meanwhile, they're not even like that. I made that all up in my
They're
head.
sitting there thinking the same thing you are, that they're intimidated by being there. More than
Yeah,
likely,
maybe,
right?
maybe, and even if they're not, even if they're a woman there that knows like all that they've given and all that they've done, and they're very confident, they're not like holding that over you, or like, I'm too good to talk to you, which is, you know what I mean? Like, no, none of them was doing that.
Right.
They're all happy to talk in a very like even playing field level way. So I think that's a risk that we could all take a little bit more of.
Yes.
Most of us.
Yes. Especially with just even, that's a kind of a professional meets a professional need, but in a friendship
That could
type of
social way
situation.
too,
Oh,
though.
yes, because that love and connection, we're all seeking that, higher quality, less quantity, more quality with those connections. And you have to put yourself out there. You have to take risks to get to that.
Yes.
And being yourself is certainly for some people, it requires taking risk. It really does.
Yeah, it did for me. And I think that we shouldn't lose sight of that, is that it's the easier route, right? Because sometimes, when we have the conversation about risk, it's often like taking the harder path or making the harder choice. And the easier, comfortable route that feels better to you is not always the right one. And
Right.
very often for many of us, that is keeping it safe, keeping it inside, not speaking your truth, not, using your strength, staying in your comfort zone, staying with your little group of people that are just like you and make you feel safe. Where's the growth in that?
Right. So then, that's hard at first, hard up
Right.
front, but then easier on the back end. Right. So you just have to choose which button you're going to hit. Gonna hit
Right.
the hard button, take a risk, and get the easier result in the end, which would be the deeper connections and the growth. And then that's leading you to new places professionally and personally.
Yes.
Versus like staying in the same spot. That's an easy button.
Yes.
But, down the road, you're feeling restless, unfulfilled.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Do you have examples?
I was going to say, are you going to ask me the same question? So I don't even think you know this yet, but I just recently said yes to another speaking engagement in May. Yep. And it's an audience that it's a newer event. It'll be like the first one of its kind. And organizer is new at it. So but there's some great speakers. So I'm honored to be at that. When the details come out, I'll post them on our page, but for those people that are local. But I said yes to that because last year I had a speaking event, which was I do better in a group of people that know me and know context behind my subject. And this will be a completely unknown audience again. And so I took a risk to get a little bit better at that, even though, that if you look at it, like the immediate return on investment for my time and the energy I would put into building out a presentation isn't necessarily going to be returned. It's not going to translate to me for, back. It's not going to buy me time back or even new followers or anything that there's nothing tangible I'm going to get from that, basically, right? Although hopefully some people do learn about us there, but it's the growth, it's the risk I took to invest in the growth. And sometimes that's what I want to point out. Sometimes you got to take a risk with nothing to be gained, but it's an investment in you and who you're becoming.
Right. But take a step back from that, because you say nothing to be gained. And that's not really even a fair statement, because I would argue that you're gaining far more. Like, you're talking about a concrete gain, and like, you're not necessarily going to increase your income or increase your business or increase your customer or whatever it is, increase your, whatever that would look like of typical success. But you gain everything when you put yourself out there and you grow more and learn more about yourself and know that, once again, you're stronger than you think you are.
Totally. And I see it that way because I'm such a learner. So that need for growth is just like innate within me. I only say that, and I only post it the way. So thanks for, challenging me on that, is because I think immediately a lot of people might have said, no, like, I'm not going to get anything out of this. Why would I do this?
Yeah.
Right. But for me, it was a risk that I'm going to take, giving up this time and this energy and diverting it away from other things to get that growth in that area.
Yeah.
And I know I need to be a better communicator to be able to make the impact that I'm hoping to make in the world at this stage. Right. And and the more I do it, the better I'm going to get at it.
Absolutely.
Right. So,
right. And
hopefully.
that's again, well, no, you will. And we just
I've
talked about this
that.
in the procrastination and perfection is like, you have to do it and you have to practice it to get better. Right.
Practice.
And you are going to gain from it, because as we hold, we're talking about building out retreats and doing speaking engagements and things like that. Well, you need to start. This is great for you. And I love this about you too. And I just want anybody that's listening, like, we talk a lot about like finding and I'm not saying your strength is not a communicator, so don't take this the wrong way, but when we talk about our strengths and strength finders, like, I'm like, I think number 6, communication. I don't think your communication is up that high. Right. So you'll pull on your other strengths, but it's awesome that that's an even bigger risk and a bigger hill for you to climb, because you're challenging yourself in something that maybe doesn't come that naturally to you.
Yes. So, okay, let's unpack that a little bit, because
did I just throw a wrench into
maybe, but so the theme of communication, which is what you're good at, means you have power and edge when you speak, when you write, like, you're compelled to communicate. Find ways to communicate. Clearly, if you don't have that particular talent, you can still communicate. I'm here.
Right. Obviously, you're
now.
running a podcast.
Right. So
you're very good at it, by the way.
The theme of communication is very different than the skill of communication. Does that make sense?
Yes.
And so I can use and pull on other strengths, because the reason I just I wanted to explain that is because I don't want you to think I'm putting myself outside of my strengths, because that goes against what we talk about, right? Because don't fight uphill. Find out the things that you're great at and go into those, because you'll have an exponential potential for success by doing that versus going from maybe you're a 3 out of 10 on a particular thing. If you pour all your energy into it, if you're just not really great at it to begin with, if you're not innately wired that way, you might jump up to a 5 or 6.
Yes.
Maybe. Yes. With a lot of effort. And then as soon as you stop the effort, you're going to slide back down.
Yes.
So that's the whole point
and
of
we've
working
talked about that in past podcasts.
Yes. Yeah. So I have to, because I don't have communication, doesn't mean that I should not get up on a stage. Right. It doesn't mean that I'm not working inside of my strengths. It means that I have to rely on the other ways. And so my connection with the audience is going to come from my strengths, like intellection, like I think very deeply about certain topics, as you guys
Yeah.
probably picked up.
No,
But it is a gift for me. It can
It
be,
is.
it can be
It's
on the
huge.
double-edged sword. I need you to rein me in sometimes, right? We
Yeah.
just went through this where we had to restart the podcast because I can just immediately go very, very deep. So, but I have to show my work. I have to tell you guys how I got to all those steps, or
Yep.
else it doesn't become a revelation. It's just a, you know?
Yeah.
So that's the side that I can use that piece and then combine the skills of through the practice to develop mastery.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's kind of what I was trying to say, and you explained it much better.
Okay, well, thank you. I
Yes.
communicated that.
Yes, you did. And you did a very good job.
But back to the risks. So, if you're out there and you're thinking, okay, so I haven't been taking risks, and yeah, you're right. When we say that we're not actually craving more comfort, we're secretly craving more excitement.
Yeah.
And a chance to do something new or put ourselves out there in a new way with this void of maybe time and energy and resources that we have because we're not mothering full time.
Right.
And so you're wondering, well, what does that look like for me? Just keep in mind that everybody has a different risk tolerance.
I love that.
Right. So that be aware of that. And maybe you're not going to be the perfect person who jumps out of the plane, but what are you doing? Ask yourself, just like we asked ourselves, what have you done lately? What risks have you taken?
Yes.
And journal that if you like to journal, or, tape yourself in a video talking about it and share it on your story, or whatever it is, however you can document that, or note that for yourself, and then maybe come back to that. And that's a good question to ask yourself about every 90 days.
Yeah.
Look back and see, what risks have I taken, so that we really kind of intentionally go about pushing ourselves out of that comfort zone that we naturally tend to go back to, right? We've got to do, it requires effort to get out of there, but the gains, we know that all the growth happens outside the comfort zone, and all the good things happen outside the
Absolutely.
Zone, right?
I just had this conversation with my son, and I think it's coming up in the next podcast that we do, but it's so true. That's where the growth happens. And we all want, I think at our age, most of us want to that sense of feeling alive and that energy and that vibrancy. And a lot of that does come from taking the risk and putting yourself out of your comfort zone.
Yep.
Meeting the new person, making the call, getting up on stage and speaking, or putting yourself out there and talking to new people, like whatever that looks like. And I think we just gave two solid examples of not small things, but also not like the bungee jumping or doing the half marathon. It looks different for different people because we're all different, and we have all different aversions to risk. Don't minimize the risk you're taking either. Like, oh, it's not risk if it's little.
Give yourself credit for the things that are risky or feel risky to you. Give yourself credit for those.
Yep.
Right. And even so most people won't take the risk because they're afraid of what?
Failure.
Yeah. They're not. Well, sometimes they're afraid of succeeding too. Secretly.
Well, that's a whole nother topic.
Yeah, because of what that would change. That is a whole nother topic. But a lot of times we're just afraid of failure. There is no failure at this age except for like the things that we regret that we didn't do. Like, so the pain of,
oh, it's so good.
Right. So the pain of not taking that risk at this age, I think, becomes greater than the pain of that potential failure, because we're so time sensitive, and that's a benefit that's on our side.
Oh, it's such, I think it's such
that
a
we're
gift.
getting to this age now where it's like, let's just throw caution to the wind and see what happens. And if I fail, guess what? I end up back where I started. I'm all in one piece.
Right.
Hopefully. Making that phone call. Yeah. Unless it is bungee jumping or parachuting or whatever. But, making that phone call, asking that person out for coffee, whatever that looks like for you, taking that risk, have the pride in doing the thing, not the result, right?
Yes.
That you took the action around doing it, not the pride in the result.
Right. Even if you fall flat on your face,
it's not about the result.
Yes.
It's about the growth.
Yes. Right. And I love what you said there, because what I think that, what is that phrase? The only things that you regret in life are the risks you didn't take.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of the whole conversation here is like, we don't want to get to an age in our life where we look back and think, what if? Like, what if I had done that thing? Like, how would things be different now? What if, I do that even now because I really like one of my biggest regrets, this is going back, but is that I did not go away to college, that I stayed, I
Mhm.
played it safe. I didn't take the risk. I stayed in a known place. I went
Environment.
to a small
Yep.
school, close to home, close to everything I knew. And I really wanted to go elsewhere. I just wasn't pushed and I wasn't sure. Like I just played it safe. And I still carry that. Here I am almost 50 and I still carry that to this
Wow.
day. And I sort of push on my kids now, like you could go wherever you want if you want to stay close to home, but use this as your opportunity. Go out and learn about yourself and learn about the world.
Love that.
Right. But we don't want to end up like, so now the beautiful part is I'm 50 and I still have all these years left, God willing, that I can go and live somewhere else if I want to
Yeah.
and experience
Well, and you
things.
did that. You moved away from home. You live in, right? You don't live
Absolutely.
near
I
where you
ended
grew
up
up.
doing that. But my point is, it was easier to have the regret at 20 than it is
Mhm.
now because,
Yeah.
let's face it, anything can
Yeah.
happen to any of us at any time. But we don't want to get to like 70, 80, 90 and then look back and say,
Right.
oh, why didn't I do that? Because there's probably not as much time left
Yes.
to right that ship.
I love that. We went, just to close up here, going back to the different risk tolerances. When you are sort of risk averse, there's, start sort of small,
Yes.
right? And then the practice of that, you may be surprised. It's not so much necessarily your wiring, but it's just the act of going through oh, I did that and I'm alive. Oh, okay, I'm going to do this
Yep.
and I'm still alive. And look at me. I'm
So
just
good.
going to, basically you get momentum when you start. And that's why we recommend you asking yourself that question every 90 days so that you can bring that to your attention, often, and making sure that you're looking for those opportunities to take the risks. You'll be amazed when you're looking for it, when you know that you're going to check in with yourself, all of a sudden these phone calls will come in, the requests for you to speak or whatever it might be. I mean, typically they tend to fall in your lap.
When you open yourself
When you
up
open
and you
yourself up.
set your mind that you will want to do the thing, it's amazing the doors that open.
Right.
For sure.
Yeah.
It's so true. I love that. That's great. And I love the 90-day reflection. And if you're gonna like in 90 days reflect on what risks you took, is also a very good idea then to add that into your goals framework somewhere of like, maybe it's you list 1 or 2 or maybe 3 risks that you're gonna take for the year and just be open. The first step is when you write that down and become aware of it, right?
Yep.
That you want to, and you might not even know what that risk is, but just being aware that there are 1 to 3 risks in the course of a year that you want to take.
I love that. And by the time this airs, hopefully our goals template or goals framework
should
digital,
be, oh yeah, it should be
digital
out.
download will be available. And so you guys can pop in to our Instagram account or our website. And when it comes out, it'll have space for you guys to track that.
Yep.
So,
I love it.
great.
Ladies, are we good? Can we wrap? Do you have any last parting shots?
Yeah, I mean, this topic is easy to talk about and hard to do. So I recognize that. So when you are taking risks, like email us, engage with us, tell us in our posts, because we want to hear from you that you are actually taking the actions to do this. And we'll hold you accountable and you can hold us accountable too. On that.
Yeah, you just took the words out of my mouth. It's always good to have accountability, so when you're sharing that, and then it's also all good to have a cheerleader that's saying, yeah, good for you. Way to go.
Yep. Yep. Because it's the hardest step is the first step.
Yes.
And it's amazing, right? It takes rocket launcher energy to get through that first step. But once you get going, that it's momentum that's very often can keep you going. And also the support of your community. So
I love it.
Which we have that here. So
yep. Excellent.
Awesome.
Ladies, thank you so much for joining us today for this discussion on taking more risks and not minimizing yourself, putting yourself out there. I love it. I hope you all have a great week. Thanks for listening. Make sure you're following us on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. Check out our private Facebook group, Life After Kids. If you would prefer to watch this versus listen, we're on YouTube. And make sure you check out the website as well, www.lifeafterkids.com. You can find all the things there that we have to offer you. And please share this. Please take a moment to rate and review, and also share with a friend if you like what you're hearing.
Yeah, love it. All right.
All right,
go
ladies.
take some risks.
Cheers to that.